Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and welcome to Patch 8.3. Welcome to Visions of N'Zoth. Welcome to the brand spanking new patch trailer. And yes, welcome to a brand spanking new cinematic to boot. We knew from data mining in the last couple of weeks that there was going to be an encrypted 2-minute cinematic coming with a new patch, and Evertel did speculate in the weekly reset that it might just be the long-awaited reunion between Anduin and Wrathion, the bromance that launched 1,000 ships. And Internet, it gives me immense pleasure to report that she was absolutely spot on, because that is exactly what we got and more besides, because this is a cinematic which doesn't just reintroduce a beloved character after 2 2/3 expansion's absence, during which time he has done a whole lot of growing up and glowing up, more on that later, doesn't just add new depth to one of the most interesting relationships in the lore, but also acts as an introduction to and jumping off point for the grand return of the final old god, N'Zoth, and all of the action that will be going down in patch 8.3, Visions of N'Zoth. I mean, the clue's in the title, but still, it's a moment I've been waiting for in this game since I've been properly into this game. It's wonderful, and even though it's not the longest cinematic in the world, you better believe we are going to deep dive cinematic analysis the heck out of it. So if you've never seen one of these videos before, let me give you the rundown. This is not a reaction video, okay? If you haven't seen this cinematic before, then this is going to be a really terrible way to watch it, because we're going to be stopping and starting and going back over bits, talking over it, and just generally having a grand old nerdy time explaining all the references and lore details and other cool bits. Also, Blizzard haven't put an official version of this on their YouTube yet, so we're using the Wowhead version. So thank you, Wowhead, a sentence which might as well be put on my tombstone at this point. So if that sounds like the kind of thing that might be up your alley, well, it's definitely the kind of thing that's right up my alley. Sounds like we've got a lot in common. So join us as we talk Anduin's corruption, Wrathion's awakening, and the big N'Zoth money shot. Okay, go, 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 go.
You mean to tell me none of your spies have returned? N'Zoth is out there, and we need answers now!
So we begin with this cool aerial shot of Stormwind Keep. And yes, I know you always make fun of me because I always stop these things like instantly and talk about the opening image at length, but that's because the cinematics team are so good at establishing shots and there's always a lot to talk about. This one is no exception, partly because it's just great anyway to see such recognizable parts of the game represented in this kind of high-res animation, but also because I love it when these cinematics reference each other. And as we will see, there are a lot of parallels in this cinematic with the Alliance Legion epilogue cinematic, all the way through in fact, but that cinematic also opened with a soaring aerial shot of an iconic Stormwind location with Anduin lines in voiceover, and also, by the way, a statue of Varian Wrynn in the shot. In both cinematics, Anduin is at the end of one conflict. In Legion, they have defeated the Burning Legion. Here, they have just signed a peace treaty with the Horde and ended the Fourth War, when he has brought news of another problem about to start. Both cinematics have sons eulogizing about their late fathers, and why do you purposely have parallels and similarities between two different scenes? Well, a lot of the time, it is to better highlight the differences in those two scenes. And that's exactly what's going on here. In the Legion epilogue, Anduin is speaking publicly, a pre-written thanking of his people about how awesome they were in the war. He is very much the statesman, reassuring his subjects. In this new scene, we see he's speaking in private to his inner circle. There's an air of desperation to his voice, and rightfully so perhaps, because we are talking about an actual real-life old god, which is on the loose and waiting to make its move. This is an Anduin worn down by the events of BFA. I know, aren't we all, you're thinking, but that's just a cruel joke, and you know what I mean. Whose crown weighs heavy on him, not in a, ooh, I don't know if I'm worthy way, like in Legion, more of a, man, this shit is just one thing after another kind of way. His voice echoes coldly around the inside of the throne room, in stark contrast to being carried on the air in his epilogue speech. And yeah, he's almost unrecognizable from that earlier cinematic. And yeah, I know, it looks like we're on to the second shot now, doesn't it? But I'm not actually done with the establishing shot yet, because there's still a couple of things that I want to point out. The time of day and the weather that is presented to us here is really important, because the brilliant sunshine that Stormwind is basking in here, it's to make Stormwind seem pleasant, homely, and more importantly, safe. There is no safer place than your own home, right? And it's important to establish Stormwind as a place of perceived safety in order for later events to have more of an impact. You'll also notice how our eye is drawn to the most obvious and central moving figures in the shot, who at this stage of the questline we will be familiar with as Wrathion and Magni. And I mean, you can't really miss Magni even from all the way up here. He's a dude made out of diamond, and with that in mind, I'd also like to pay tribute to these Stormwind citizens, these absolute legends who do not bat a single eyelid at the sight of a massive diamond dwarf and his red glowing-eyed friends strolling up to the keep where the king lives. Like, no one cares. Whatever conversations these guys are having, it is intense. Clearly. And so we do eventually move on to the second shot properly, and I love the way the characters are arranged here from the point of view of as if we just entered the throne room ourselves. Now, I don't know about you, but for me it is always meaningful to see grown-up Anduin sitting on this throne, because it always reminds me of the very first time we ever met Anduin in this room in vanilla as a child, with his massive innocent eyes and goofy grin and ginormous terrifying head, with Bolvar on one side, soon to be playing an important role again in Shadowlands, and a disguised black dragon on the other, which, you know, might be relevant in a minute or two, who knows. But of course, like I say, this Anduin is very different, almost unrecognizable. In fact, okay, he's still got a weirdly massive head, but it's in his hands and exasperation and anxiety, despite being surrounded by people he trusts, like Shaw, and considers friends, like Valera and Bane Bloodhoof. And I love that Bane Bloodhoof is here too. His close relationship with Anduin portrayed by his less formal stance, one foot on the steps, showing more personal concern for the king. The fact that he is here at all is a nice visual solidifying of the new truce between the two factions, and a nice touch that Mela is here with him as well. You'll remember that she was the character that we sent back to Thunderbluff just before the Siege of Orgrimmar 2.0 to heal Bane's wounds. She apparently doesn't see her duty of care to him to be quite over yet. He's still recovering. She also, incidentally, has quite a bit of experience with the Black Dragon Ebonhorn in High Mountain. Anyway, Anduin is all like, we need to think of a plan, damn it. This N'Zoth shit is real. Shaw tells him,
we are doing all we can. Speaker Magni is coming, along with a new advisor. He claims to have information for us.
I would love to think that the pause Shaw puts here before the word advisor means he knows it's Wrathion on his way, and what a delicate situation he's dealing with here. Also, mostly because we know that Wrathion is totally Shaw's type. You know, if Shaw is in love with Flim Fairwind, which he definitely is, then he's definitely going to have a thing for the rakish charmer who's about to make his entrance now. And as Anduin mutters under his breath,
a new advisor.
We can see that a new advisor is the last thing that he feels he needs. At this point, you sense he's probably just fed up with other people's advice, which is weird because usually Anduin is always soliciting other people's advice. It's very unlike him, isn't it? But he doesn't know the half of it because, of course, that advisor is
Wrathion.
And this is such a great entrance. Wrathion strolling in with this shit-eating grin, because let's be honest, when you are this hot suddenly out of nowhere, when your hair suddenly got this good, you probably strut around with a shit-eating grin everywhere you go, but especially right now when you're arriving triumphantly with a diamond dude to tell your childhood bestie how to kill an old god. And this is the moment we've all been waiting for since Mists of Pandaria, when the relationship between these two characters was genuinely one of the most engaging parts of the whole story, how they learned from each other and formed that unlikely friendship, despite one being an ideological teenage prince and the other being a 2-year-old last surviving black dragon. It feels like Wrathion has been missing forever since then, long enough to get this outrageously hot, and this reunion doesn't disappoint.
Wrathion.
Anduin, it's been so long.
Okay, I love everything about this sequence. I love how Anduin doesn't skip a beat. He is up on his feet the second he realizes who has just walked in. I love how the camera follows on Anduin's shoulder here with almost a handheld quality to help the feeling of movement and momentum, and how we can't see Anduin's face, but we can hear his footsteps quicken as he approaches his old friend, who is opening his arms, clearly expecting a hug at this point. I love the sheer visceral energy in this punch and the warped contortions that it forces Wrathion's face into when you watch it frame by frame, which is a perfectly normal thing to do. There's nothing wrong with watching this frame by frame. This is a deep dive, okay? I love how Anduin punches him so hard, he actually punches some of Wrathion's human form away to reveal the black dragon underneath. Valera absolutely loving this, by the way. I love how this whole thing is kind of like an epilogue to my favorite ever quest in Warcraft, The Day That Deathwing Came, from Cataclysm, where Feldurin, the Lost, tells you a tale about how he saw Deathwing one day and decided to punch that dragon in the face, which he does in his story, and now here is Anduin the Lost doing it, but for reals. Awesome. A genuine Day That Deathwing Came reference in a WoW cinematic. I mean, I've seen it all now. I love how Magni Bronzebeard, the ex-king of the dwarves, the speaker of Azeroth, is totally the comedy character in this entire scene, starting with this little aside like it's the end of a cheesy movie or TV show.
Oh, dragons.
Oh, those crazy dragons, always getting punched in the face.
I suppose I deserved that.
Oh, you deserve more than that.
And this energy dynamic of Anduin being genuinely upset and Wrathion being smoothness level 9000 is one that carries the scene.
My father is dead because of you!
This is a line that's confused a lot of people online who are like, hang on, what was that? How was Varian's death Wrathion's fault? I mean, Sylvanas blew the horn and then the Horde ran away and then Gul'dan did his big green explodey thing and that was that. Wrathion was nowhere to be seen. What's going on? Well, you're lucky I'm here, fam, because I would like to direct your attention to the novel War Crimes, which bridged Mists of Pandaria and Warlords of Draenor. The last time that Anduin actually saw Wrathion in the lore, and where, to cut quite a long story short, Wrathion essentially breaks Garrosh free, avoiding his sentence and into alternate Draenor, which obviously kickstarts the whole of Warlords of Draenor, reason enough to get punched if you ask me, and results in the return of the Burning Legion and ultimately in alternate Gul'dan being on the Broken Shore. And of course it was that alternate Gul'dan who killed Varian. So, you know, Anduin definitely has a point here. But Wrathion's line next is my favourite in the whole cinematic.
My father is dead because of you!
And my father is dead because of the old gods.
It's a really clever line, because initially it sounds like he's about to get into a whole slanging match and continue the argument that Anduin is trying to start here. But actually what he does is a lot more generous. He says, my father was killed by the old gods, which is true, because Wrathion has a pretty complicated family history, okay? But here's 12-year-old me to tell you all about it in an old video. So Wrathion is the son of Nyxandra and the nephew of Onyxia, because it turns out those two are sisters. That also makes Nefarian his uncle, by the way. Wrathion says Deathwing is his father, and so does War Crimes, but that family tree means Deathwing is also his grandfather. Yeah, Deathwing is his dad, and also his granddad. Dragons just be like that, I guess. But what he's really doing here is, he's saying, I'm not going to join in this squabble, Anduin. The old gods are the thing that we need to worry about now, chum. It's a really efficient way of bringing the focus back to what's important in this moment. Both Wrathion and Magni's lines here are really effective and delivered beautifully by their voice actors too, but not before we are reminded that Magni is, of course, totally the comedy character in this scene with the exasperated, look, he's really short camera shit to get him in frame.
Lad. He's come to help us.
And this look between Anduin and Wrathion. You know, sometimes I think back to the golden time of Mists with all those glorious Randuin ships, and I think, you know, maybe that was just a meme. I'm sure there wasn't all that much sexual tension. It was mostly just lols, right? Well, no, we didn't imagine it. There it is, alive and smouldering in 10,000 degrees, guys. Seriously, get a room. But they can't right now, because, you know, all their other friends are still there, and also there's an old god to take care of, so instead they have to go for a cozy walk along the balcony, which is handily just long enough for Wrathion to deliver all his exposition and remind us all of the tragedy of his father and grandfather, Deathwing, who only became Deathwing because of N'Zoth's corruption in the first place.
Neltharion the Earthwarder was once the protector of Azeroth, but N'Zoth turned a noble mind to madness, and now my father
and grandfather.
Is only remembered as Deathwing. And, as I haven't the least desire to share that fate, I've been studying how to avoid it.
And this is a genuine, really beautifully written, performed, and animated speech he gives here. It tells us so much about Wrathion in a really elegant way and shows us the real difference between these two boys. Anduin's biggest fear is not being as good as his father, that he won't be worthy of the name. Everything he does is to try and live up to his father's legacy. Wrathion's biggest fear, as revealed here, is that he will fall to the same weakness as his father and grandfather, and everything he does is to find ways to protect himself from N'Zoth's influences. This scene is as close as Wrathion ever really comes to showing weakness or vulnerability, and when it's hidden under this strutting bravado that this long balcony walk gives the animators so much chance to show off, it's actually surprisingly and touchingly human, I think. It's really good. All of this also means, of course, that Wrathion is the #1 worldwide expert on how to defeat N'Zoth too, which is handy. I think there's a really cool Geralt and Dandelion vibe going on here too. Wrathion's more wordy flourishes contrasting with Anduin's annoyed desire to get to the point.
Just tell me how to prepare for this attack. Our armies
will be useless. N'Zoth will strike here.
And as Wrathion tells Anduin what he probably already fears, the conventional force isn't equipped to deal with N'Zoth's powers, we get something that I've been waiting for a long time in WoW. Even if just a hint, some proper cool, spooky, psychological, cosmic horror, old gods stuff going down. Because look, I make no secret of it, okay? I love the old gods. All that Lovecraftian, unknowable, ancient, massive being stuff really does it for me, and as a result, N'Zoth has always been my favourite baddie in WoW. I want so bad to see him wreak his very specific kind of carnage on the denizens of Azeroth. 8.3 and the Ny'alotha raid look to be going a long way to giving me that, as does this cinematic. And as the music gets really spooky, and Wrathion tells Anduin,
he'll manipulate emotions, get people to act in ways contrary to their nature.
Anduin looks down at his hand, the one he just used to punch his old friend in the face. And yeah, he may have deserved it, but suddenly both we and the Boy King think, you know, actually, that was very unlike Anduin to jump straight in with violence, wasn't it? Kind of contrary to what we'd expect of his nature, now you mention it. This shot also reminds us again of the Legion epilogue, where Anduin holds the piece of azurite in his hand right at the beginning of all these events, and the effect that had on him. And again, that's to contrast the two scenes. That epilogue is very much Anduin showing who he really is. Kind, compassionate, calm among the citizenship. And now we think, yeah, actually the Anduin we've seen today hasn't been himself at all. Angry, snappy to his friends, rolling his eyes at the prospect of advice, Wrathion appears to be right. And then this awesome nightmare sequence.
You won't be able to trust your senses, your memories, your friends. After all, what is real?
And the art and the music and the sound design blows this out of the park with the subtle warping of the senses here to give it that nightmarish quality. The high-pitched ringing, like as if a grenade had just gone off next to you. It's kind of like the way that N'Zoth gets into your mind is a preemptive PTSD. He kind of gives you advanced shell shock, you know? I love the dreamlike changing of Bane and Magni that gives their appearance a knowing and menacing air. And then, thank you, Blizz, though, seriously, N'Zoth. I needed to see N'Zoth in one of these cinematics. I dare say we'll see him again in the Ny'alotha ending as well, but that'll be us defeating him. I want to see him doing his thing, and his thing is everywhere here. Getting done. And obviously it's really cool to see him rising up, appearing in that sudden flash as if he wasn't there, and then we blinked and he was, filling the horizon, appearing in reflection in Anduin's eye, representing how he has got inside Anduin's head, and the money shot of destroying big ass buildings. But again, there is a deeper meaning to this. Remember when I said it was lovely and sunny in Stormwind, not only so the change is noticeable when it gets all dark and voidy, but also because we need to feel like Stormwind is safe and that it's home. When Anduin was upset and angry with Wrathion, he went outside to look at the cathedral to help cool himself down, because don't forget, Anduin is a priest. Stormwind Cathedral is his safe space. It's literally a place of comfort and meditation for him. So the image of this place of light getting enveloped and destroyed by a monstrous and horrific being of the void is much more significant to him than just a cool monster destroying buildings and being cool. It's showing us and him that the light that he puts so much faith in is not going to be enough to help him here. And as Wrathion snaps him out of this, if you will, vision of N'Zoth,
Don't you see, old friend? It's already begun.
and for the first time calls him old friend. Oh guys, seriously, you're killing me. Anduin accepts as much, and gentler than we've seen him all cinematic. His features filled with a more recognizable resolve than the frustration that we saw him gripped with previously. Much more himself again, referring to Wrathion as his advisor after sneering at the idea at the start. N'Zoth's corruption tasted but then shaken with the encouragement of his beautiful bro. He finally, genuinely asks for help.
Very well, advisor. Tell us how to stop him.
It's a great setup for the action of 8.3. It's a really enjoyable reintroduction of an awesome character in Wrathion, and a really effective introduction and first real sighting of the old god who has been such a central figure of in-game events since Cataclysm. It totally got me hyped, and somehow I talked about it for this long, so there's clearly a lot going on in there too. Bravo, guys. Seriously. Bravo. And of course, we will see Stormwind in this state again as we play the game. When we make our way through that particular horrific vision and see it fall into corruption. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we see a truly corrupted Anduin in the Stormwind scenario. But we do see a corrupted Shaw, of course, and we help Valeera to hunt him down. So it's a nice touch that they were both in this cinematic too. But of course, the real star of this show is the relationship between Anduin and Wrathion. And the reason that people go over the top and meme with shipping these two is because, well, I mean, seriously, that look though, but also because their friendship, when it blossomed in Mists, was the kind of complicated, subtle, and interesting, well-written interaction that we as players weren't totally used to seeing in the game back then. I really want to see more of these two together. I really don't want Wrathion to do a Khadgar and F off after all this N'Zoth stuff is done with. I'd love to see this interaction evolve and grow throughout Shadowlands, because I just find the dynamic really interesting and engaging with their two very different daddy issues and power levels and changing responsibilities. I hope that this is the start of a beautiful friendship. So what do you think, guys? Did this cinematic get you hyped for 8.3? Were you happy to see the return of Wrathion and his very tight trousers and his gorgeous hair? What did you think of N'Zoth's arrival on the scene? And were you just the tiniest bit worried about how easily Anduin fell to corruption in the first place? Let us know in the comments below. And thanks for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us. Thank our patrons who give their actual real-life money to make all of our videos happen. Thank you, you beautiful people. Because without you, there would be a whole lot less Taliesin and Evertel. And if you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Aaron Phillips. No, my name is Taliesin. From me and Evertel. Until next time, cheerio.